How's it going, ladies and Bruces? I'm Bobby Sixkilla, and welcome to the long-awaited Game of the Year Awards 2019. The biggest and most time-consuming thing I do here on the channel that I both love and dread. What a year 2019 has been for video games. We're not talking about the controversies and business practices today, just great games. I would like to start, if I may, with a story of when I was a child in the 1840s. Back in those days, there were only like 12 games released a year, and because we had no money, I had to make do with playing the demos of those 12 games over and over. In school, you would be called a nerdy dogshit breath, and you would have your school books knocked out of your pathetic arms on a daily basis. Well, who's laughing now, Stephen? I have like 10 people mildly interested in my opinions, you son of a Excuse me. My point is that, in this day and age, video games have become a worldwide phenomenon. The single most common hobby on Earth, in fact. This year alone, 7,000 games were released on Steam, and sure, most of them were akin to a bowl of sewage artfully arranged with After Earth DVDs. If you're willing to sift through the dregs, you'll find many diamonds, and we're going to talk about 10-ish of those diamonds here today. The first thing we need to do is outline what is and isn't in the running to be on the list, and why. Firstly, it must have been released on PC in 2019. I know we're playing Pokemon on the Switch, but this is primarily a PC channel, and it's much simpler to keep it to one platform. Now, when I say released in 2019, I mean in a complete state. So games released onto early access are not in the running, but games released from early access are in the running. This is also true for episodic games. Their release year will be counted as the year the final episode releases, because as far as I'm concerned, it's not a complete game until that point. The final requirement is that I have played at least one episode of the game on the channel. Now, you may think that's very restrictive, but even under these conditions, we have 72 games in the running. There's a full list of the games in the description if you want to check that out. So without further ado, number 9, Afterparty. As a spiritual successor to Oxenfree, Afterparty was all but a shoo-in for a spot on this list, as Afterparty is basically Oxenfree with new characters and a new story. It is a very interesting premise with the same flawless execution and art style as Oxenfree. The game is rife with moral quandaries, where you often have to decide how much damage you're willing to do to others to escape hell, ironically. I don't think Afterparty's story quite matches the incredible Oxenfree, but the dialogue is brilliant, and it's genuinely the funniest game I have played in years. Number 8, The Outer Worlds. So far I've not had a chance to put much time into The Outer Worlds, as there are so many great games coming out around the end of the year. But from what little I've played so far, I can already tell it's the game I wanted Fallout 4 to be. The interesting and often humorous dialogue, the player agency, the fascinating world where you never know what you might find, all I can say is, I hope the game is successful enough to kick off an entire franchise, because this is the kind of RPG that are few and far between. Number 7, Little Misfortune. Misfortune Ramirez Hernandez is an adorable 8-year-old girl in a horrific and unforgiving world where she is cursed to always reap the worst in life, despite her kind and loving nature and optimistic outlook. The game is ostensibly about choice and consequence, but regardless of your choices, the reality always stays the same, and makes it all feel futile. It's dark and depressing, but also cute and funny. It's the game of 2019 that was closest to bringing me to tears. Number 6, Yuppie Psycho. Yuppie Psycho is a totally different breed of horror game. Its premise is strangely mundane for a game trying to scare you. You got your first job in an office building, but instead of making photocopies and checking emails, you must hunt down a witch that is taking control of the company and perverting the buildings and its occupants, all while undercover pretending to be a normal office worker with no special abilities except a trendy pair of spectacles and puzzle-solving skills. The beautiful pixel art and animations do a great job bringing on a constant feeling of dread and unease, and is a great example of why games don't need to be realistic to be scary. Number 5, Pikuneco. At the time of writing, I've still only played the single player, so I presume I'm still missing half of the game. But even so, the single player experience was a delightful romp, with cute and colourful characters with goals of their own and a beautiful surreal world. The gameplay revolves around delightful physics involving his legs, light puzzle solving, and a funny but slightly close to home story about a character giving away free money, and evolves into what might be interpreted as a metaphor for the ravages of capitalism. Number 4, Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night. As I'm sure you're all aware by now, I love Metroidvanias, and in the last couple of years we've been spoilt for choice when it comes to good ones. But I'm always on the lookout for another great Metroidvania experience. When it comes to Bloodstained, I feel like I'm far less qualified to talk about how it holds up as a Castlevania game, as I have as yet still never actually played a Castlevania game, but as a Metroidvania I would argue it's probably the best thing since Hollow Knight. The combat is visceral and challenging, the art style is beautiful, and the map is a huge sprawling mess to explore. Turns out sometimes nostalgia can bring something great. Number 3, Yakuza Kiwami, Kiwami 2. Okay, you knew this was going to be on the list. Instead of taking up 2 spots, or deciding on the superior game, I've decided to have both in one slot, and they were both released on PC this year. Kiwami and Kiwami 2 continues Ryuga Gotoku Studios' constantly improving writing, storytelling, and gameplay mechanics. Each Yakuza game has improved on the one before it with emotional and heartfelt writing, a combat system that is less survivable than ever, and a completely dissonant tone that for some reason works. The wild tonal shifts usually make a game feel unfocused and sloppy, but Yakuza's main story is so intense and emotional that the wacky, often ridiculous side missions offer a welcome break to the emotional intensity. Yakuza is one of the few AAA franchises left that still feels like a passion project. Alright, next up, we have a brand new segment I'm calling the Bruce's Choice Award. For at least half of the year I've been posting polls on the community page containing all of the eligible games that have featured on the channel so far this year. And now, in the number 2 spot, I would like to announce the Bruce's Choice Game of the Year. Smile for Me. Smile for Me is a point-and-click adventure game with a difference. It is set in a first-person perspective where you have to nod and shake your head to interact with NPC characters. How has no one thought of this before? It completely transforms the game into one that immerses you in its world and characters, rather than the usual detached hand of God affair. It has everything I love. It's well written, has sympathetic characters, a cute cartoony art style, dark and mysterious undertones, the fast track to my award list. See Figment, Hollow Knight, Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass, etc. Now it's finally time to reveal my choice for the Sixkilla Gaming PC Game of the Year award. Supraland. The thing I love most about Supraland is how it has made exploration fun and rewarding, in an age where fun exploration is almost a lost art. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of wandering the wasteland in Fallout 3, where you could just go walking and find a cult that worships a sentient tree, or a settlement called the Republic of Dave. There are things to collect, things to find, references and optional side things to do, all of which you'll find only if you go looking. The writing and storytelling is funny and clever, the graphics are vibrant and colourful, and the puzzles are as hard as shit. Seriously, the puzzles are either super hard or I'm brain damaged. No comments, please. But the satisfaction you get from solving a puzzle in Supraland is equivalent to beating a boss in Dark Souls. So that's why Supraland is my Game of the Year for 2019. Another year down, another video that took 3 months of work. Thank God we only do this once a year. 2019 was a great year for video games with some notable AAA games and another helping of unique indie games, if you're willing to look hard enough. To celebrate this year's Game Awards, there'll be a giveaway on the Discord server, so make sure you join up, link in the description, down there. Make sure you guys let me know what your games of the year were in the comments below, and what you do and don't agree with on the list. Fingers crossed as always for an even better 2020, and look forward to start polling you Bruces for next year's awards, and always, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.